Red state versus blue state. Is there two Americas? So red state versus blue state, the two different colors refer to those states in the United States whose residents predominantly vote either Republican for red or Democratic for blue in the presidential elections. This is very new terminology. It came around during the United States presidential election of 2000 with Bush versus Gore, and a lot of people attribute it to Tim Russert. But that election was a very challenging election for journalism because of Florida with issues there with the recount and so forth. And this map was just constantly showed to the American public in all the news stations. Since 2000, the term has kind of grown to mean something else, and a lot of people see the blue as liberals and the reds as conservatives, and this has really been used a lot in this kind of divisive language that's in media, red versus blue. I'm from a red state, I'm from a blue state, I'm conservative, liberal, so forth. It really shows the power of maps and how it can really change the way people think and speak about phenomenon that's happening. We can even see it in today's news. Like, for example, here you can see on CNN them using the red state, blue state to talk about the electoral map to divide states up, either it's conservative or liberal, and they look at it either by the state level, they might look at congressional districts, and this is how they define the election. And when people are paying attention to the election, they're seeing these colors, and it's making them feel, either they're part of one state or the other state. The question is there a red state or a blue state? Is America two different parts? So a lot of the issues here are because of scale. So you can see here, for example, is the 2004 presidential election map, and depending on which way the Electoral College voted and the popular vote for each state, the colors are either red or blue for Bush versus Kerry, red again being for Republicans, blue being for Democrats. And you can see here it makes it look like that there's, for example, the left coast, the liberal coast, or the northeast liberals, and then the heartland is red, and it really changes the way we look at it, way we look at the United States. But whenever there's two main issues with this map, and it has to do with scale of analysis. The first problem is going to be the fact that the map aggregates the data by the state level, so we're going to lose some information on the geographic scale. The second issue is that there's not a scale. There's only two choices, either red or blue. So the data itself, if it's 51% red, it's going to be colored all red, and only makes two options. And then the third issue is time. Right now we're looking at 2004, but what does it look like over time? And so if we look at this map here, this map shows the colors of the states based off of a summary of results from 2000, 2004, 2008, and 2012. So every presidential election. And so you can see that some of the states are definitely, for example, considered very red states because every election they voted for the Republican candidate, and other states are blue states because every election they voted for Democrats. So this looks at the temporal, and so we can see here, of course, the coasts and the heartland, but there's some surprises, like, for example, Nevada is showing up purple, or Florida is showing up purple. And so these kind of results kind of question already what we were seeing in the previous static map of just a pure red heartland. There's some areas that are obviously changing. But that only kind of solves some of the temporal issues. But what about the scale? Because remember how I was saying 51% is going to either become red or blue completely because of the 51%. But if we look at here at this map, this one takes the average of the margins of victories from the last 5 presidential elections. So this is solving kind of temporal scale issues and solving this, only 1 or 2 categories by margin of error, and coloring it only by how much they win by. as opposed to 51% becomes pure red. And from here, you can see, yes, there's still some very, what you can say, red states like Alaska or Hawaii, but then the heartland's starting to look a little bit different. Some parts of the coasts are looking a little bit different because they're not as red or as blue as you would think because of this change in an analytical scale. Going back to our 2004 map, if you look at it versus what we were just looking at with the scales, you can see that again there's a lot of nuances. It's not just pure red or pure blue. We can see that there's variations, and you sometimes have these kind of more purple looking states. But finally, we're going to want to look at not just temporal scale or like the analytical scale, but we also want to look at the geographic scale. Because of the numbers being aggregated to the state level, we're losing a lot of the variation that you would see in the county level or the precinct level. So in order to really understand the political landscape of America, we need to have a correction in the way we present the red state and blue state. So we have a scale, for example, here of 100% Republican to 100% Democrat, and we also need to have a scale that shows the geographic variation. And here, for example, we're using counties. So which counties go red and which counties go blue, and then the percentage of margin. And so going back to that 2004 election, you can see that the United States looks very purple, not very red or blue. This map versus this map tells a whole different story of the United States. Here we're seeing a very divided country, only two options, red states or blue states. But here we're going to see that a lot of the states that we thought were very red or very blue are not. There's actually some variation. So for example, here in Texas, where you see that it was a red state in both of the analyses before, of either temporal averaging all the elections, past elections, or even in just the one shot, one static year. When we look at it on the county level, we can see that there are blue areas. So for example, here you can see the Rio Grande Valley is blue. We can see that Austin, Texas is blue. We're seeing urban areas are more purple, and there is, the Panhandle is red, but there's a lot more variation than one would think. In California, which we saw a very blue state, yes, you see some very blue areas here, like for example around San Francisco, but whenever you go into the interior of California, you can see that it becomes very purple, and even in some cases starts going a little red. And what you can see here is that there's a variation in geography of the red and blue. There's a variation in the amount of votes actually for each county for red and blue, with the purple, using the purple scale bar. And then before, we can see that there was a temporal variation. And so what's interesting here is that the red versus blue America is a lot more complicated than one would think. And actually, you can maybe even make an argument that we're not so different in red states or blue states. We're actually a collection of purple counties, and that just because the way the electoral system is set up and the way that the media reports it, you get the feeling that there's a red state and blue states.